Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of In the Loop. We're super excited to be joined by Yorke Rhodes. He's a personal mentor to both Max and I. He's also a founding member of the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, the director of blockchain at Microsoft, and also the founder of blockchain at Microsoft. And he's an e commerce professor at NYU, amongst many, many other things. What was your dream job as a kid? Did you expect to be where you are now?
No. When I was a kid, I didn't have a computer, or a phone. So, yeah, my life was immersed in actually building things in model railroads. My dad was a big model railroad guy, so we had a lot of like gadgets and stuff like that, and that was sort of my computer days. I had no idea like what I would do in my life, honestly. I probably thought I would be a professor because my father had a very strong influence on that.
So I guess going through that and not really knowing what exactly you wanted to do, like what was kind of that journey like? Like how did you get to like where you are? And there's a lot of different places you are right now, but I guess more on kind of the tech journey that you went through.
So I think if you look at sort of some of growing up in an academic household, everything's a question, right? And everything's learning, right? And so that sort of is just curiosity, right? Curiosity in everything you do. And, you have it early in your life and then it just disappears somehow over time, right? And so I've just been able to maintain that. And I find that is a place where I thrive. And it's why I do so many different things and why I enjoy starting up new classes where I have new subject matter expertise, for example, right? And so, I think that's the through theme in my life that has taken me through many different roles. And often why I change a role is because I want to learn something new. So.
Definitely. I had a dinner last night and was with someone who was like 98 years old, and he was running super fast like through the apartment. I was shocked. I was like, "How do you stay so like fit and young? Like you're 98?" And he was like, "I only like to talk to the young people." And he would always kind of like stick to me. He was like, "Just whatever you do, just please listen to this. Just stay curious. Always be learning. That's why I can run around how I can run." And I thought it was
so Yorke.
Yeah, this is going to be Yorke when he's 98.
Totally. And I also exactly the same thing that your dinner guest said, which is like when you are teaching people who are in college age or master's students who are usually now very close to college age, you're seeing the lens that they view the world in, and that keeps you young. And I had it obviously through the lens of my children, who are now in their mid to late 20s, but I get to keep that right through the teaching that I do. So it's also one of the reasons I love teaching is it's a way to make a mark on a world. But also a way to stay engaged with, a young generation.
Were there like really pivotal moments in like your career kind of set your trajectory? I think I'm curious to more kind of on like the blockchain side where like, oh, this is something interesting and got really like deep into it and all the awesome supply chain work you've been doing at Microsoft.
So I guess a couple of something I didn't realize I was doing in my career, which was actually riding innovation waves. I didn't realize it until much later in my career. And I happened to have that recognition in the mid, like the 2010s period, right? And so I realized that I was doing this in my career at that point, always looking for like, what's the next innovation wave? And then going and spending time in it. And this recognition for the first time in my life happened right before I discovered blockchain. And so when I had my personal discovery, when I had my personal discovery on blockchain, I was very aware about like my life it was spent in these 8 to 10 year periods of specific emerging technologies. And so that also encouraged me to be much more aggressive in evaluating the technology. So that was an interesting insight, sort of inflection point. The other was the reading a book in the year 2000 by an author named Tracy Kidder, which was called Mountains Beyond Mountains, which oddly enough was about multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, of all things. But reading that book sort of gave me an inflection point in my career, which was, wow, if I could do something with technology that had the impact of what these doctors were doing for multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, that would be a sweet spot. And so also when I got into blockchain, I started realizing very early the value case around humanitarian identity for refugee situations and things like that. And so all these things sort of came together when I started the blockchain journey. So yeah, those two are pretty major sort of revelations in my career that helped me sort of get to where I am.
That's funny. You were like, I'm going to spend 8 to 10 years on this technology. This one better work. But I mean, in your day-to-day, I think it's important for like our audience to understand like what really is it that you do at Microsoft? Like what does your position entail and what you're actually doing on the day-to-day? Even though I know this is very different and you're always participating in events and conferences, but your job at Microsoft, what is it that you do on a day-to-day?
Yeah, so I work in a strategy and transformation team in cloud hardware supply chain. And I got there because of the blockchain work, which we started. I was theorizing corporate supply chains as a value case where blockchain could play a role in like 2016. And one of the reasons why I sort of got to corporate supply chains was because it was also a way, corporate supply chains touch the developing world in many, many ways, right? And so it was also a lever to have a funded initiative in a developing world context where you could also have humanitarian value case. And so I started investing in the supply chain work in 2018, along with a general manager in the cloud team. And then I got recruited very aggressively in spring of 2020 to come and take over the program, which is how I got into supply chain, actually as a full-time role. And being part of the strategy and transformation organization means that similar to what we're trying to do with blockchain is we're looking at what is the transformative things that we need to do to really transform the business, and not just like, it's not like I'm just a cog in a wheel of a supply chain. I'm trying to figure out how to transform the work there. And, frankly, knowing that coming in was what gave me the permission to actually see myself in a role in supply chain, right, as a technologist doing transformative type of work. And then we took that program that I had been investing in since 2018 through 2 major releases. And in the second major release, my boss and I had a plan to basically hand it off, essentially, so that I could focus on the next 3 years of transformation work, which I transitioned into last July. And so July 2023, full-time, I transitioned into the current problem space that I'm working on, which is solving for traceability in upstream supply chain, which is a specific reaction to a change in the market from volunteer reporting to mandatory reporting based on regulatory compliance, and specifically around the guarantees of avoidance of forced labor in our supply chains. It's a problem that every brand now faces, and as well as thinking through the coming regulations on the emissions attribution category for sustainability and climate that is actually touching the same upstream supply base. And so that's what I've been working on full-time since last July in my day job.
And of course, this has a lot of blockchain and Web3 components. But what about AI, right? Does AI play some sort of role in your work? Do you see some intersection between AI and Web3?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you guys probably know this, but AI as a utility has an impact on everything, right? And we're already seeing that in so many ways. And so as a piece of emerging technology in a transformation, absolutely there's AI as part of the overall solution in many aspects of what we're doing in the traceability work, specifically in the context of how we're looking at the Web3 components of the traceability program. There is a layering of AI value case on top of that in a couple of different areas. And I think the logical way to think about the convergence of a value proposition between Web3 and AI is, how does AI provide value to anything that gives you verifiable data? right? That's one. How does something that gives you verifiable data provide value to AI? That's another lens, right? So the provenance concepts that we understand quite well, and how do like an intermix of different technical approaches actually provide all up value to whatever you're trying to solve. Whether it's cryptographic tools like zero-knowledge proofs that let you prove things without revealing underlying data, or fully homomorphic encryption, which gives you a way to query on unencrypted data, which is a slightly different value case in terms of those two approaches. I could go on.
No, definitely. There's a lot of use cases kind of around it. A lot of times people say Web3 or like blockchain is like trying to find is a solution and trying to find the problem, when it's usually the other way around. Like you have a problem and you try to develop a solution around. Like how do you kind of stay grounded on that and kind of dissect? There's a lot going on in the industry in Web3.
Yeah, I always like to take a step back and help people understand that any innovation cycle is very similar no matter what the technology is. And so Web3 and blockchain is no different than that. And what that means is that early on in a journey of technology, it's often a solution looking for a problem.
Yeah.
When we first launched websites, like nobody cared, right? Right in 1995, right? Like it's definitely a solution looking for a problem, right? And based on having that foundation of common infrastructure that was now available across the entire web as long as you were connected, a new ecosystem grew, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you think about AI, that's sort of same there. If you think about it, and AI has been around for a long time, right? Like we've had machine learning capabilities and all kinds of different tooling for decades, right? In some cases. So the moment that AI became ChatGPT was sort of when it crossed the chasm, right, into like consumer relevance, right? And so that's an example of a long journey of innovation around those, around AI technologies. That's an example. I think the way you want to look at Web3 is the concept of and Chris Dixon does this really good with the title